Canada is a cartel held together by bribes. Right? This is not the country that we imagine in our heads.
They are going to do a constitutional lens test on it, so I'll just leave the court to go through their process.
Publicly called on the chief electoral officer to stop that court reference so the vote could proceed.
And if this country comes apart at the seams, it won't be because the West walked away. It will be because the Laurentian elite shoved us right out the door.
Alberta just dropped a bombshell after Canada once again denied its exit and kept trying to disarm the province with cheap tricks.
The Alberta Prosperity Project will have to wait a little longer before it can start gathering signatures from supporters. A judge has ruled a judicial review of the Separatists' referendum question can go ahead.
Danielle Smith fired back, warning Ottawa not to mess with Alberta. Because if Ottawa keeps pushing, the consequences won't just hurt Alberta, they'll shatter Canada itself.
Damage, take away, diminish their ability to defend themselves.
You know what really sets the tone for how broken Canada has become? That ridiculous Ontario home invasion scandal. A guy defends his own home, gets charged, and tossed into jail. Imagine that. In a country where you can't even protect your house without the government breathing down your neck, you know something is seriously wrong.
Where a man is now facing criminal charges for defending himself from a home intruder. What are your thoughts on that situation?
Well, if you don't want to get shot or beaten up, don't break into people's houses. Pretty straightforward.
And here comes Danielle Smith, who doesn't dance around the issue, she just says it flat out. If you don't want to get beaten up, don't break into people's houses. Simple. Straightforward.
We had a similar incident in Alberta where somebody defended themselves and they determined that there was not a reasonable likelihood of conviction, because we do expect that people are going to use a reasonable use of force to defend themselves and their families.
Brutal honesty that we rarely hear from politicians anymore. And that's the difference right there. Ottawa and its crowd act like criminals need sympathy. Danielle basically says, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And honestly, that type of no-nonsense attitude is exactly what resonates in Alberta right now.
You have the right to use a certain amount of force to defend yourself if somebody breaks into your home, and she supports that.
People are tired of rules stacked against them, tired of Ottawa's hands reaching into everything, whether it's the energy industry, the farmers, or the provincial economy as a whole. You can feel the frustration building. Alberta's people aren't just annoyed anymore, they're ready to push back, and every time Ottawa tries to block them, it just fuels that fire.
What Canada's pushing for, again, Doug Ford's willing to allow criminal charges and then says, well, our system's broken. Our country's broken because of Team Canada.
Now let's talk about the political nuke Alberta just dropped, July 4th, 2025. Forget American fireworks, the real show was in Alberta. The Alberta Prosperity Project walked into Elections Alberta and filed their official referendum petition, and they didn't waste time with fancy wording or political jargon. The question was brutally simple. Do you agree Alberta should become a sovereign country and cease to be a province in Canada? That's it, no sugarcoating, no 50-page policy explanation, just yes or no.
Are your rights to security of the person somehow offended because your fellow Albertans are being asked a question? Absolutely not.
Now let's talk about the rules. And you can already guess why Ottawa hated it the second they saw it, because if people say yes, Alberta isn't just walking away politely, it's walking away with the money, the resources, the backbone of Canada's economy. Imagine being the roommate who's been living off someone else's credit card for years, and suddenly the card gets cut off. That's Ottawa's nightmare, and Alberta knows it.
The decision is a win for Albertans who want to stay in Canada. It means the group pushing for separation has to have its referendum question reviewed by a judge before it can start collecting signatures to get it on a ballot.
What makes this petition even crazier is how Alberta rewrote the rules just to make sure this was possible. Before, it was basically impossible. The law demanded 600,000 signatures in 90 days. That's like asking people to run a marathon blindfolded. Nobody could realistically hit that number. But then Danielle Smith's UCP government came in and lowered the bar to something actually human. 177,000 signatures in 4 months.
Canada is a cartel held together by bribes. Right? This is not the country that we imagine in our heads.
Still a mountain to climb, but not Everest. And here's where it gets fun. The APP didn't just meet the bar, they spiked the ball in Ottawa's face. They claimed 250,000 Albertans were already lined up with pens ready to sign. That's not just clearing the requirement, that's obliterating it. Imagine Ottawa sitting there thinking they'd put Alberta in a cage, only to realize Albertans had already broken out and were halfway down the road. It's embarrassing for them, and empowering for Alberta.
I heard it at the doors more times than I can count, and I'll tell you plainly, Alberta staying in Confederation is not up to me, and it's not up to the Liberal government. It's up to the people of Alberta, and the Albertans know that they have options.
You know, things are getting real.
And of course, Ottawa couldn't just let that stand. No, they had to pull out their favorite play. Stall, stall, stall. Enter Gordon McClure, the chief electoral officer. Instead of letting the people vote, McClure decided to toss the whole referendum into court for what he called a constitutional lens test. Drop a massive weapons ban. Because nothing screams trust us, like banning 179 new... Now, doesn't that sound official and academic? But here's the kicker. He claimed the referendum question might violate over 30 different sections of the Constitution and Charter, but when asked which ones, he couldn't even name them. 30 violations, but not a single example. It's like failing a test and the teacher says, well, you did something wrong, but I'm not going to tell you what. That's Ottawa's playbook in a nutshell. Keep people confused, throw around fancy legal terms, and hope everyone just gives up. A $1 billion buyback program is now set to force Albertans to surrender their firearms by October 2025. The timing couldn't be more explosive, but Alberta wasn't about to roll over. The Alberta Prosperity Project fired back immediately, and they weren't sending rookies into the fight. They brought in some of the biggest names in constitutional law: Keith Wilson, Jeff Rath, and Eva Chapok. These aren't interns writing memos, these are heavy hitters who thrive in legal battles. They went straight into the Court of King's Bench and said, fine, if Ottawa wants a fight, Alberta's ready to give them one. And presiding over all of this was Justice Feasby, a judge with serious experience who wasn't about to drag his feet. To everyone's surprise, the hearing started moving faster than anyone expected. Suddenly, Ottawa, who thought they'd bought themselves months or even years of delay, were watching things speed ahead. The panic must have been real in those back rooms. Overbearing landlord who suddenly decides to change the locks. And for what? For the illusion of safety, because nothing screams safe like making law-abiding gun owners feel like criminals while real criminals are laughing their heads off. Here's the part that really rattled Ottawa. If the court signs off on the referendum, Elections Alberta only has 30 days to open the gates for official signature collection. 30 days. That means Alberta could be just months away from putting independence on the ballot. Not in theory, not in some abstract political debate, but in real life. Imagine the headlines. Imagine the shockwaves across the country. Alberta, the province everyone thought would just grumble and move on, suddenly staring down the very real possibility of a sovereignty vote. That's not a pipe dream anymore. That's a timeline. And no matter how many courtroom tricks Ottawa tries to throw at it, Alberta isn't backing down.
Ottawa is breaking this country, and 50% of Westerners are saying maybe it's time we let them.
So here's where the comedy of double standards kicks in. Former PC Deputy Premier Thomas Lukaszuk thought he'd play the hero of Canadian unity by launching a counter petition to keep Alberta in Canada. And what happened? A judge looked at it, shrugged, and tossed it aside as legally irrelevant, literally called it a nothing burger. Imagine putting weeks of effort into organizing, writing, and submitting a petition, only to have it roasted in open court as meaningless.
They don't have the same seismograph in Alberta, so you have to magnify the sounds of discontent for Ottawa to hear it.
The question couldn't be more blunt. If that doesn't sting, I don't know what does. But here's the wild twist. Despite being legally irrelevant, Elections Alberta still approved Lukaszuk's petition. Meanwhile, the independence petition that had met every requirement and had real people lined up to sign was thrown into legal purgatory. If that doesn't scream double standards, I don't know what else would. When you're fighting to stay chained to Ottawa, the red carpet rolls out. But when you're asking if Alberta can leave, suddenly it's treated like a constitutional apocalypse.
The Reform Party in the 80s and 90s, their slogan was "The West wants in, Wexit Canada's slogan is "The West wants out."
Now let's move to the momentum that's been building underneath all of this. Look no further than the Canada Pension Plan. People are paying into it their entire lives, and what's the big return? A measly 1% in the first quarter of 2026. 1%, that doesn't even beat inflation. Over 10 years, the net return was just 8.4%, and the real return was 5.7%. That's barely hanging on. People see those numbers and start asking, why are we throwing billions into this system just to scrape pennies back?
But if Ottawa keeps treating Alberta and Saskatchewan like provinces to be punished, taxed, and controlled, then maybe we've got no choice but to take our future into our own hands, whatever that may look like.
That's where Danielle Smith comes in with the Alberta Pension Plan idea. Her pitch is simple. Alberta can do better on its own. She's promised that seniors would get equal or even better payouts if Alberta pulled its money out of the CPP and kept it inside the province. Think about that. Billions of dollars that currently flow out every year could stay right here funding hospitals, education, police, and yes, pensions. Instead of Ottawa siphoning it off and then tossing crumbs back, Alberta could actually make use of its own money.
Posted all over Alberta during election times or by-election times saying, hands off our CPP. CPP investment posts only a 1% net return in Q1 of 2026. That doesn't even combat inflation, folks.
But of course, the fight isn't just about pensions. It's about the broader mood in Alberta. And that's where those Alberta Next panels revealed just how divided things are. On one side, you've got moderates saying maybe we should look at sovereignty within Canada, some kind of middle ground. But the hardliners, they aren't having any of it. Danielle Smith herself got booed because they wanted one thing only, a straight yes or no vote on full independence. No fence sitting, no half measures. Either Alberta leaves or it doesn't. And that split shows just how fired up people are. This isn't some fringe conversation in coffee shops anymore. Polls are backing it up too. Independence isn't a whisper on the margins anymore. Support is growing, especially outside Calgary and Edmonton, where Ottawa's influence is weakest. The frustration is real. At rallies, people are hammering the same points again and again. Pipelines that never get built, farmers buried under federal regulations, carbon taxes that crush small towns, equalization payments that bleed Alberta dry. To them, independence isn't just about politics, it's about survival.